Hello class, this is your teacher Mr. McDougall with your next Photoshop tutorial. I'm going to teach you how to create a painted text effect like this. So we're going to take a blank image that just has an image of texture or something, and we're going to convert it into this liquefied paint text. So that's what we're going to do today, the painted text effect. As usual, download today's exercise files and open them up in Photoshop. So pause the video and do that right now if you have to, and we're going to start with this one. So once we've gotten to this file, the first thing we're going to do is type the first letter of our first name. So let's get our type tool, go to your T, and then click on the image, and then type the first letter of your first name. Make sure it's nice and big. We're going to take it really big so we can see all the details, and we're going to get as much of this water picture as possible. Pick a cursive font for this one. Since we're going to do that flow liquidy thing, instead of picking one like Impact like I normally do. I know, shocking, I'm not going to use Impact this time. But pick one that's more on the cursive side because we want that flow running paint option. So there's lots of cursive options available. I'm going to go with this Script MT Bold one. That's the one I'm going to go with, but feel free to pick a different one as long as it's a cursive flowing one because we're going to have that flowing liquefied paint effect on it. So let's put it right in the middle. Pick your font if you haven't already. Pause the video if you still need to pick your font. And then what we're going to do is, just like we did before a long time ago with the clipping mask, we're going to do that effect. So we need to unlock the background layer so we can move it up above the text. So let's click to unlock the background, move it up above your text layer so it's on top. And now we need to create a clipping mask of this to the letter. So let's go up to Layer, and then Create Clipping Mask. Just like that. So now we have it clipped. We can still move the letter or the background behind it if you want to adjust where you like it to get the most flow. I kind of like it right there to see all the ocean swirls right there. Pick your spot because we're going to do the only bit of destructive editing in this next step. So make sure you have the spot that you like because we're going to destroy one of these layers in just a second so you won't be able to change your mind. I like it right about there depending on what letter you've gone with. And then we're actually going to do some destructive editing by merging these two layers together. So to do that, click on one of the layers, doesn't matter which one, hold shift and click the other one. That will select both. So now we have both layers selected, and then with both of them selected, we're going to right click and go to merge layers. So that has crushed them into one layer, and now they're permanently combined as one layer. There's no more separating the two. So that's why I said make sure you like it the way you like it before we do that, because that's the only bit of destructive editing that we are going to do. First, let's give it a new background before we add the liquify effect. So let's create a new layer again. Done this before. Come down here to this plus button to create a brand new layer. Let's move it to the bottom. Take that layer, put it on the very bottom, and let's just fill it with a solid color for now. Go to Edit, Fill, and then where it says Content, choose Color. If it already says Color, choose Color again. That will bring up your color picker. And then pick whatever you want. I suggest a relatively dark background, but it doesn't have to be. Just pick your favorite color and then click OK. All right, that's looking good. So now, before we use the liquify tool, we are going to convert it to a smart object because we're going to add a filter to it. So we want to be able to change or undo the filter if needed. So on this top layer, the one that's your letter, right click, convert to smart object. Now we know it's a smart object because we see that little symbol. And now we're going to talk about a new filter. This filter is called liquify. So go to filter, and it's right here in its own category called liquify. So let's click on that. So I'm going to talk more about what you can do with liquify in the next lesson, but the main thing is that you can do exactly like it sounds. You can liquify objects. So if you come up here to the default forward warp tool, that should be the default one that you're on. If you zoom in, it's a brush that you can increase or decrease the brush size. You can pull things around to liquify them essentially. So if I start with my letter, I can start pulling this way, and you can see what's starting to happen is it's liquefying the contents of the letter. So I'm going to liquefy it to go with the flow of the letter. I'm going to still, like I'm tracing the letter, I want to go with it. If I pull it out, it's going to pull it like that. So you got to be careful. Let's Control Z to undo that. You could do that a little bit if you want to kind of just mix it up just a little bit at the ends, but we still want to be able to tell what letter it is. Don't warp it around too much that we can't tell the letter anymore. But for the most part, let's just kind of go with the flow, liquefying this. So even though it's already water, we're now making it look like running paint. So just kind of pull in, Make sure your brush is always smaller than the letter for the most part, because if it's bigger, it's going to pull too much. Right now, see how big it is? If I pull like that, it's going to go too hard, and we may not want that. So we always want to make sure our brush is at least smaller or roughly the same size. You can change your brush size as you go too. You don't always have to keep your brush the same size the entire time. You can change it as you go throughout the letter. So I'm just kind of brushing. I'm going with the flow of the letter. And if you kind of pull it too far, you might curve it a little bit. And that might be okay a little bit. So if you want to like curve it at the end of your letter, that's okay, because we are liquefying the entire thing. We just don't want to liquefy it to a point to where we can't tell what letter it is anymore. So I'm just pulling down, just pulling, clicking, small clicks, and just pulling. You have to do this in small clicks. You can't just pull and hold the whole time. It won't have the same effect. And you can pull the same spot over and over again to keep liquefying it even more. I come down here, do that. See, that might happen where I have the checkerboard because my brush was too big. So I want to make sure my brush is a little smaller. And there's a couple other liquify tools besides the forward warp one. There's another one we can use called the twirl. So this one says twirl clockwise. If I click on that one, this one you can have it relatively big, because if you click and hold an area, it will twist it around. So you can see it's starting to twist it in a specific direction. You don't want to go too far. See, I've done that. Now it's gone a little too far. So I may want to be careful, not twist it that much, or maybe make my brush a little smaller. There we go. If you twist it too much or use these tools too hard, it will start destroying parts of the text as well. So maybe at the end you can twirl it just a little bit just to see what happens. That might be too far. You just experiment a little bit. You never know what's going to happen. But we still want to make sure that we can tell what letter it is. I want to know that mine's an R. Okay, so another thing we're going to do is we're going to add some dripping paint, just like we did with the graffiti name. We're going to use the liquify tool, the forward warp tool, to pull down certain parts and make it look like the paint is running. So I'm going to come up here, pick a spot in your letter, and we're just going to take a spot and kind of pull it down over and over again. Like that. So pull more than you think you need. I know it looks like a lot, but it's actually going to shrink a little bit once we do the next couple tools. But just take a couple spots, like 3 or 4 spots that you want to just pull down, and we're going to make it look like the paint is running right there. Right here. Pull this down. Even a couple more spots, just like little runs right there. Like the paint's just dripping a little bit. Pick little spots you just want to pull down, like gravity's making it droop. There we go. And then we're going to do something different with these big drops right here. So with these big drops, we're going to use a couple other new tools, like the bloat tool. If I click on the bloat tool right here, that makes an area get bigger. So if I take the end of the little paint drop right here and I click and hold a little bit, you can see that it's blowing up. It's bloating right there. Be careful when you're using this one. You may have to experiment with your brush size. If you do it too close to the tip of the thing, it will shrink it down like that. So you kind of want to do it up on the body a little bit and make sure that you have enough liquify. I might do the same thing right here. Click and hold a little bit to blow up the end. Again, if yours isn't blowing up, if yours is shrinking, then try to use the bloat tool a little higher or start pulling more down. Maybe you don't have enough paint to work with. And then a little bit more right there. That was good. I know it looked like a big fat drop, but now we're going to shrink it with the opposite tool called the pucker tool right here. Pucker will shrink an area. So now if I kind of use the pucker tool and I kind of just very lightly click along this body, it's kind of shrinking it. So now it makes it look more like the drop of the paint where it gets skinny and then it bulbs out at the end before the liquid actually drops off. So I'm just going to very slowly click up that area right there. That looks good. And then maybe a little bit right here. Try to make all of them different sizes. You don't want all of them to look exactly the same or too uniform, because then that also will look unrealistic. Just clicking. Now it's creating this paint effect. And then that's why I also use the forward warp tool, just kind of pull down little corners like this, making it look like it's just running a little bit. Now it's looking good. Now it looks like the whole letter has been liquefied. So once you are satisfied, click OK. And now you can see this cool effect. And we did do a smart object, so we can turn this on and off if needed, or jump back in to mess with it as well. Let's add one little effect to make it a little bit more three-dimensional. So on this layer, let's go to FX, and let's add a bevel and emboss, just for fun. We don't use this one very much because it does look a little weird, but it does give it that 3D effect. So with the bevel and emboss, you can mess around with these sliders like depth, size, and soften. And you can find a spot that works for you, but using these will kind of give it that more three-dimensional look as well. That adds the light and the shadows to it. And now we look like we have runny paint. You don't want it to go too far, because then it might look a little weird. So let's just go subtly. Now it looks a little too flat. Just give it more 3 dimensions so it doesn't look so flat. There we go. Click OK. And again, all of these things can be turned on and off. The only destructive editing we did is that we merged the layers together. So now we have this cool painted text. This was just a glitch. Yours might look like that. That's okay. See, it was just a little glitch. If yours does that, it's just the processing of Photoshop. All right, so good job. I hope you like it. What I want you to do next is I've given you 2 more exercise files. Choose one that you want to use, and I want you to type your full either first or last name. So like, for example, for this one, do the exact same techniques. And now I did my full last name, McDougall, doing it with every single letter, kind of liquefying it, making it look like running, dripping paint. So the exact same thing with your first or your last name. So you only have to pick one. You don't have to do both. However, you can do both if you want to do the third one as well and type the word graphics. I'll give you extra credit points for doing all 3 of the files if you do graphics. But to complete the assignment in whole, I just want you to do this first one and then pick one to do your last name. And then you can pick either one. I've given you both as a variety to choose from. Okay? So have fun creating your cool painted text. Make sure you take your screenshots, upload them to today's assignment, and have fun. Let me know if you have any questions.